Hey gang, I'm Brian, this is Reggie, and this is episode 4 of R&B Talks. And we're going to talk today about husbands and what it means to be a good husband.
And feminism.
And feminism.
And man.
And man.
And
liberalism.
Parenting and fatherhood and
all those things.
We're going to put it all together today.
Yeah, we're going to tie these first 4 episodes
maybe.
up.
Look, there's going to be a little bit of it because we have to talk. We've talked and integrated husband into some of those other conversations.
Yes, absolutely.
So we need to probably talk directly to a husband.
Yeah.
But also too, there's some things I think we need to go back on and rehash. Not like, I shouldn't say like change our mind on or anything.
But deep dive a little bit.
But let's put some of these sections together.
Sounds like
let's build a bridge to manhood.
Well, and if you look at the 5 tenets of a biblical husband, it naturally ties all of those things together through those tenets,
which we will get to.
I know. So excitingness. So how was your week, Reggie?
It's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was kind of angry a lot.
Okay. That's a little, makes me a tad nervous, right?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Now, I can't really talk about, to be honest, I can't talk about it here.
Yeah, that's
okay.
But,
you know, it's how can I put this, man? Sometimes you tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't like it.
Then you take a little bit of a poke for doing it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty much standard. I don't know. This week's been sort of a whirlwind for me. Like it's been definitely a blessing because prayers have been answered this week,
That's
but
good.
Also some new and interesting problems have popped forward that have called upon me to handle them. And I cannot say that I am 100% ready to handle them, but I'm certainly going to take a running attempt at it. Right?
Here we go.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah,
like,
man.
Screaming Viking run right onto a trampoline, out of control, forward flip, and just see where we land.
I know.
So, yeah.
I'm afraid I'm going to hit the mic with my cigar.
There's worse things to fear, Reggie.
I know, but right now that's what I was thinking about the whole time we've been talking. It's like, make sure I don't.
It's okay, man. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. If you do, I'm sure that people will not judge you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure.
Or maybe they will.
I'm sure
Who
they will
cares?
judge me, but I really don't care. That's the thing. Here's one question. Let me ask you this.
Please do.
Would you think someone on a web meeting, like a Zoom or a WebEx or something, okay. And if they were smoking a cigar or a pipe, particularly, would you think that be unprofessional?
No. And the reason I say that is simply this. Pipe smoking, cigar culture has just become part of it, right? And not to mention the fact, I mean, okay. So, and this is funny that you bring this up because I had this discussion with my wife the other day because she does Zoom. All of her work is through Zoom online, right? So she's doing her thing and she dresses up and I'm like, when they decided to transfer a lot of jobs to Zoom meetings where you're going to be at home, they had to expect some behaviors that wouldn't go on within an office, right? Like you wouldn't go into your office and fire up a cigar if there was a no smoking policy and it was going to bother other people. But you smoking a cigar on a Zoom call isn't going to put smoke in anyone's face. They're not going to smell it. It's not like you're on there, it's not like you're like snorting right before you smoke it and you're doing some kind of weird hand gesture.
I've been thinking about this a lot, man.
I don't think it is. I think it's fine.
Because I mean, here's the deal, especially with, if you look at, if you look at people like Winston Churchill.
Yes.
That dude didn't have a cigar. Like, I mean, on TV, on board meetings, I mean, that dude was he smoked at least 10 a day.
Well, if you looked,
average of 10, I think
if you look at every picture that's ever made of him, there's a cigar in his mouth.
Usually.
Yeah.
Or in a drink. He's always drinking scotch or something and a cigar, right? And, like General MacArthur during the World War II.
Yeah.
That dude had a corncob pipe on the bridge while he was actually on the deck, everything. Like he did.
Absolutely.
And he led with that. Mark Twain, same thing. When he did any kind of thing. Now, Mark Twain probably isn't one of those political leaders that was like speaking a lot, but he did do some. But there's so many of them though too, and like you have, and now like in modern examples like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah, that he has a cigar all the time. Mm-hmm. You know, and even the latest Netflix documentary of Arnold is actually pretty cool.
Yeah,
I liked it a lot. I haven't watched the last installment, whatever that is, but the other two are pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, here's the thing. It's a prop almost for me, and I say that because check this out. Okay. Before I get into that, the quote that I resonate so much with is from C.S. Lewis, and he said, "A pipe gives a wise man time to think, and a fool something to put in their mouth." Yeah. Right. So to me, I've internalized that a lot, like using the pipe as a vehicle to like slow it down, to like put some silence in there. And sometimes like it's really deliberate. Like I'll be asked a question or there'll be something come up. And in my position where I'm a escalation point for global matters of sorts can be for things, there is a definite tool to use. And that's like, if stuff's real high tension and we need your opinion on this, Reggie. And if I just sit there and you can see it, like I just take a couple puffs, right? And it's silent. And then it's kind of a good thing. Cause then now everybody's like, oh, it's like this anticipation that builds and it settles everything down. It spaces it out. And then now all of a sudden what I say becomes more impactful because I've just created space to allow what I'm about to interpose in the conversation in a more impactful manner. So for me, it is definitely a tool. And also it allows me to like keep my mouth shut sometimes when what I would have said something probably stupid. Cause there is a lot of times when I like think of some nonsense and I'm like, I'm glad I got that.
I'm really glad I didn't put that out there.
You know, but I'm glad it is like that. And I do think whether or not like if it's a cultural thing or not, I guess what I'm saying, what I would think is I don't want to be the conformist to culture in everything. I'd rather be that guy who counters that and leads and is more of a trendsetter than anything.
Well, but I don't think for you it's more of a cultural thing in that sense because you and I have had several conversations about tobacco and cigars.
Sure we have, yeah.
And you are very knowledgeable about cigars and pipes and the different tobaccos and, you know, the flavors and the combinations and how it's rolled. I think for you, I think hobby shorts it. I think it's
enthusiast.
I think you are an enthusiast, right?
Sure.
I think for you, it's part of your life in a way, right? Like you the same way that me going to the gym and working out and getting that adrenaline high, for you, this is something that calms you down. It relaxes you. It gives you, again, one of the things that I've always appreciated about yours and my conversations, especially when we're having a one-on-one conversation, is if I ask you a question, you're very contemplative before you answer me. I hate with a passion when I ask someone a question, and especially if it's a question that has any weight, and they immediately start babbling because they want to answer me, but they're trying to formulate an answer while entertaining me. I don't need to be entertained, right? No. And one of those things that you do that I appreciate is you take out that pipe and you take a couple of puffs and you think it through. And usually the answer that you give me to that question, even if it's something or a perspective that I hadn't thought of, it's a very well thought out perspective, right? Like I'm not getting, well, Brian, you know, and the weather's changing and, you know, look, there's a donkey in the yard or whatever they're saying to me that entertain me until they think of what they want to think of. I would rather there be a little bit of silence. Right?
Yeah. Well, back in 2020, here's a good story. Okay. It was the last time I was able to go to like the company sales conference, the kickoff thing they have, right?
Yeah.
It was in person. It was down in Florida. And now, of course, I'm not sitting in these conference halls, you know, smoking my pipe or anything. Cause I mean, they don't allow smoking indoors or whatever. But they had all the gatherings were like outside, all of them. You know, you went outside to have like your meal. There a lot of meals were out there and everything. I was always with a pipe all the time, right? And that was, you know, and I had so many conversations that were a result of that. I had so many people that I connected with that I would never have spoken to had that not been the case. And I'm sure there was some negative thoughts, right? I mean, I'm sure people, because there's some people that have a real angst, whether it was a bad memory or they just, or it's somebody who associates that with lung cancer or something or whatever. But the point is though, is that I connected with so many more people and like, it was a thing. And even some people, I mean, I'm talking like people that I would I've never run across.
Yeah.
Never. And here I am having these conversations. They were great. They were like really interested in like, dude,
yeah,
I haven't seen anybody smoke a pipe in a long time. That's freaking cool. It smells amazing, blah, blah, blah. And then you have this whole conversation. They'd ask me like, is this like, do you have like more than one? You know, it had led to all these questions that I got to answer. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Right. And even now on like some of my meetings, I'll have some of the other, you know, some of my peer groups or other people in the company go, dude, that is cool. What is that? Or what kind of tobacco you got? I mean, I get questions like that all the time, dude.
One of the most vivid memories I have as a kid was my grandfather quit smoking and he smoked a pipe for about 3 years. And then he went to smoking the worst thing I've ever heard, Swisher Sweets. They were, yeah. Ugh. But he smoked. He had one of the old cherry wood pipes with the black stem on it.
I got you.
And he would smoke cherry tobacco, and the house would smell amazing. And there was almost from the memory, was a comfort, right? When you would smell that tobacco, it was almost like, oh, you know, my grandfather's sitting in his chair, he's relaxing, everything's calm, we're all good, right? So for me, that brings back a very positive memory. Like a very, you know, didn't have a whole lot of positive memories when I was a kid, but that brought a very positive memory. It almost seemed like it put him in a different state of mind. When the pipe came out and he relaxed, his entire mindset would change, right? And so, you know, and look, my grandmother died from lung cancer because she smoked 2.5 packs of cigarettes a day. I mean, when you talk about a chain smoker, my grandmother would have one lit in her fingers, one behind her ear and one in the other hand, smoking one and lighting each cigarette off of the other cigarette, right? Like it was truly chain smoking.
I've known that, yeah.
Right. So do I think that there are health risks to smoking pipes and tobacco and cigars? Sure. But there's health risks to getting in my car and driving here. So it's a matter of choices, right?
Yeah. But there is conflicting data around because you also have to understand like how there's a lot of money in nicotine patches and like
for sure
stuff like that, right? We're talking a lot.
Well, quitting smoking has become $1 billion industry.
Yeah, right. So you know, and actually even like the companies who I can't think of the name of it. Who big cigarette guys. Well, there we go. They were in their warehouse was in Lexington. Yeah, the big tobacco warehouse downtown. They own like a lot of that.
Yeah,
now
for sure.
Right. So it's like, come on. Anyway, look. The point is though is that there is when you actually do real studies between pipe smokers or cigar people, there's a difference between cigar and pipe too. There is. Especially pipe smoking, from what data I can see that people actually went through the trouble of getting the differences aligned, right? If you don't smoke like an absurd amount, like over like 10 pipe bowls of tobacco a day, you are not negatively impacted in your mortality rate than a non-smoker. That's the best data I could come up with from everything. And I can't look, I know somebody, if they would be like, where's your sources? Look, there's so many of them out there. I couldn't even begin to rehash that. Like a long time ago, I did all this research and I don't really feel like going back and doing it again. But that's what I did because I wanted to make sure I wasn't detrimental to my future, I guess.
Well, but I think also there's a lot of factors that have come out in the last decade, especially, which talks more to the fact that a lot of cancers are hereditary.
It doesn't even matter.
Yeah. So, I mean, and there's also been guys that smoke 2 cigarettes a day and have done it for
smoke 2 cigarettes a day
and died of lung cancer.
And eggs every morning and beef and something beef every day and live till they're like 107.
I'll give you an example, and you can look this up. There's a guy in New York. I think he currently passed away, but he was like 102 years old. He smoked a pack of cigarettes a day, and he ate 3 meals a day. And those 3 meals a day consisted of, are you ready?
I'm here.
Bacon and white bread fried in fatback grease.
That's serious.
He lived to be 102 years old.
That's awesome.
Now, can I say that
my hero.
I know. Can I say that genetically he was probably pretty gifted? Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, dude, you smoke a pack of cigarettes a day and 3 meals a day is bacon and bread fried in fatback. Come on, dude. You're trying.
You have taking a
hard swing.
That
right?
wish is,
and to be 102 years old, man, way to swing and miss with some pride, right? That you hung in there till you dropped dead at 102 years old.
The one World War II vet that I always thought was fascinating was the guy who he smoked like 20 cigars a day.
Yeah.
He was an old black fella. It was so whatever he said was awesome. I used to read. They did an article on him in like Cigar Aficionado. Well, maybe not that one. I can't remember which one it was, but there was it was just a cool guy, and he lived to be 100 and something. He was like one of the last World War II veterans alive.
Yeah,
dude. But the thing is, it does help you deal with stress, and we know stress is like the biggest cause of like cardiac problems.
Yeah.
So if it lowers your stress level, you're actually doing a lot of good. But I digress. Look, the point is like, I guess I had my own, pipe and cigar channel, Pipe and Redbeard for a few years or whatever, until it just got to be like, I just don't, and I know I love it. It's part of me. I've spent money in here to make sure that it doesn't affect the household at all. That's why I'm up here too, because up high the smoke doesn't drop down. It kind of goes up. I even have an exhaust fan that can go in the window.
Nice.
If it were to be, if I find out it's getting out too much or whatever, I'll put that exhaust fan in and sucks everything out. But I really haven't had to do that with my very expensive air filtration system I put in here. But yeah. So anyway, it helps me be a better, I shouldn't say this. I was going to say it helps me be a better like man and a husband and a dad. And maybe in a way it does, but I mean, it's really just it's another avenue to kind of slow down.
Yeah. But to answer your original question, I don't think so at all. I don't think it's rude or inconsiderate or now, like I said, if you're sitting at a board table with all of them, okay, I can get some complaints, the smoke, the smell.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, look, I'm not going to be disrespectful.
You're at your house, right? Like, this shouldn't even be an issue.
Well, it's kind of why I'm even today wearing my overalls and stuff. Yeah. Like, I've just felt so. It's been a troubling week this week with like just some stuff, and I'm just like, man, I'm home. I'm just going to be home today,
dude.
And look, I just think sometimes we do need to do that. Like, just realize, look, you're home.
Yeah.
Freaking chill.
Well, and that's one of the things I appreciate too, though, is you and I are not really trying to put on any false pretense with each other. Mm-mm. So, I'm going to show up in sweatpants and a t-shirt.
Dude, right? I like my crazy shirts, bro. Yeah, I do. I love crazy shirt because it's another one of those things where like it's another thing that goes, that guy who smoked a pipe and had a strange shirt?
Yeah.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
That's
right.
That
guy was super cool.
Right.
Or, man, he was an ass.
Yeah.
Whatever. But, the thing, so that brings this, look. All right. So we've talked about being a man. We've talked about being a father.
We talked about worldview.
We talk about what worldview is, your perspective of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we got to talk about some what's it mean to be a husband?
And I think we also need to discuss the fact that being a good husband ties together being a good man and a good father, right? Like all of those they're all part of the same wheel, right? Like that you can't really separate the three.
But you can have, I mean, like obviously you can, and now especially in today's culture, you can be a father without being a husband.
Yeah,
you can be a husband without being a father.
Yeah, which we discussed last week.
We did talk a little bit about that. There would be more, but I mean, really for this, I think it's too much for today. So I'd ask you, Brian, like your own personal husband experience. Okay, what would you say has been probably the most challenging thing with being a husband? And knowing your wife, I can probably guess, but I won't.
The most challenging thing for me has been balancing the role as a breadwinner against being available for my family. Does that make sense? Like I take providing for my family very seriously on every level. There's no part of that I do not take seriously. Sometimes where I feel a tremendous amount of guilt if I don't feel like I've done enough, right? And a lot of times I have trouble saying no to something that's could be profitable to us short or long term because I want so much for my family to be secure. And a lot of that comes from the fact that I wasn't when I was a kid. A lot of my problems when I was a kid was, there were times we slept in my mom's car. There are times that we, I would wake up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and she's pulling me out of some home and taking me somewhere else. And there was just this real in-depth fear in me that was this going to be the way it was all my life? And I told myself when I got married and I had a wife and I had kids that if I did anything right, I would provide for them.
I mean, I echo some of that because at the same, I know we had government assistance, growing up and stuff. And thankfully that my mom's sisters never married.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say they never married. One of them did marry, but got divorced, but they were all, they were like they were second moms.
Yeah.
And, we always had things because it was like there was a joint effort between the four of them. Right.
Yeah.
So we always had whatever we wanted, really. I mean, but my mom had some times where she would just cry because she didn't know, and it got to the point where she finally made a choice and she said, I'm going to go back to school, get a degree so I can get a better job and all this stuff. Cause then she was working full time and going to school and then had a second job. And I mean, it was looking back on it, I'm like, how in the hell did she do all that? But I mean, that's what she did. And then we ended up, she wasn't around for some things, but man, hell, I grew up and I'm fine.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, we're standing on our 2 feet, right? I don't know. What do you struggle with the most, Reggie? I'd be interested to know that.
Sometimes I can be way too abrasive. Like, my wife loves the fact that I'm very, assertive. Yeah. And I'm very transparent and I'm blunt as all get out. She loves that, but I sometimes don't massage the message I'm giving in a way that is probably the right way.
Really? I'm just kidding.
I know. Imagine that. And I mean, I've gotten better at it.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's just something I don't normally do anyway. Like it's part of what I've always done. It's like, you're going to get me and it's all you're going to get. But there is a point though to where I've obviously learned that my intention behind what I'm saying can get misconstrued if you don't put it the right way to certain people.
Yeah.
And this goes back to worldview, because even between me and my wife, which you'd say, well, it should be the same. Well, it's not, because she's female and I'm male, and there is a difference in perspective of reality there.
Absolutely.
One's more emotionally tied, one's more factually tied, one's more people-centered, one's more thing-centered. That's just how a male-female biological system works in the human genome, as it were. Yeah. So yeah, there's a difference there. So I mean, that's probably it. Having girls helps a lot. You know, when my two daughters have like definitely mellowed and took some edge off for sure. But yeah, that's probably the number one thing, man. For sure.
Well, I mean, that brings something to light too, because that's a bone of contention sometimes between my wife and I. And it's not by any means something that we struggle with on a heavy basis, but I have two boys and I got to raise two men. And sometimes I'm very direct with my sons because I feel that I need to teach them to be able to communicate in a direct manner when they're trying to defend themselves or when they're trying to defend a position. And because my wife is more emotional than I am, I will find her, and this is, I mean, it's not a bad thing. It's fully expected. I will find her defending them from an emotional standpoint. So that will cause sometimes friction between us because she doesn't understand, and rightfully so, what I have to do as a husband sometimes with young men who, you know, live in the current society where men are not smiled upon. This goes back to being a man, right? I mean, I'm teaching them to be stern, stoic, respectful, responsible, and that's all part of being a man. And those are my responsibilities as a father. I love my kids, to take care of my kids. I have great time with my kids, but I also have a very, very big responsibility that I take seriously to treat them in a way that's going to develop them into men. And sometimes that causes, I guess you could say the same thing, that message, when she hears what I'm saying to them, she hears it in a totally different way, right? The implications of what you're saying.
Absolutely. Yeah, I get it, dude. Uh-huh. You know, one thing about when I was looking, because what I spent most of my time on this week when looking at things was the scope of what's the worldly counter to my view of a husband, which would be probably what the world would define as a feminist husband.
Please tell me what you found.
Look, the thing is, most of it, I think we do. And I mean, really, it's like acknowledging your wife as a equal partner, mm-hmm. but their definition of equal partner is different. And I guess this is the thing. They say kind of the same thing, except where the biggest difference is like this like war on gender and gender roles and all that stuff. It's like, if you stripped away that, really, it's kind of what we would say. Yeah. You know, I do help my wife out. I do get her opinion on things and whatever. I do cherish her opinion. I make it a point. And I do help her with things when I need to help her with things. But that's like, I mean, I don't know how many how many sites I went to, and they all said the same thing, but it was common with them was, you know, they work with your kids to strip away the gender ideologies of the societies and stuff. Uh-huh. But, you know, and one of them was like, one specifically was like the fight against princess culture. And even that, I would agree with that. You know, I'm not raising princesses. I'm not. And now they love the princess idea, yeah, and they love watching princesses and they love wearing princess dresses and all this stuff. But I don't push them to be a princess or specifically be a princess or call them my princess. You know, I don't do that. And I think that's probably what it is. But there is like a princess culture, which I didn't know there was, but apparently there is a princess culture. But yeah, really, but I'll just boil it. It's really not that hard. It's just, the thing that's common between like whatever feminist ideology you have is like the demolishing of the gender roles. And what I find really curious about that though is like they want to demolish gender roles, but then it matters what gender you are and you can identify with. So it can't not matter and then matter.
It's funny that you say that because I was watching a Jordan Peterson lecture the other day, and he talked about that very thing, which was the most confusing thing about gender ideology is that it is an ideology. He's like, it's not. He goes, look, if you want to abolish genders, you would quit recognizing either genders. There would be no gender. He goes, but we have this hamster wheel that we're running on where we don't want you to tag us with a gender, but my pronouns are he and him. Well, those are genders. Those are descriptors of a gender, right? Like, what are we trying to do? And it's the Marxist ideology, right? It's create confusion, create anathema of all these things that are going on, make people uneducated through confusion, and then take control, right? That's the Marxist ideology, right? It is what it always has been.
Yeah.
And it's why it fails, because you're always going to have the intelligent percentage that are going to look at it and go, no, that's not right.
I mean, the thing is though, dude, I think, and this is for me, like if I look at this as a Christian man, husband, father, person, right? I just have a deep seated, like, just shake my head and go, man, you people you really need some help.
Yeah.
Because I think, and you see this with the suicide rates, and you see this with the medical problems that these people are having when they transition with all the chemicals and all the stuff they are given. It's like, their whole life is spent with a lot of trouble. Why? How is that beneficial to the person instead of trying to deal with the psychosis of what the hell they're trying to deal with? I just don't. I mean, I know where it comes. Just like you said, I know where it comes from. I know what that's for, and we could go off on the whole. And people would call us conspiracy theorists all they want, but at the end of the day, we're pushing more people to have more issues, to be more depressed, more, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, but husband is something, that we have to define very clearly.
Yeah. And I will say that it's interesting because while you were studying a lot of the worldview of husbands, I was studying a lot on the biblical definition of husbands.
But see, the thing is, those two things really, there's some biblical perspective, like it's like of spiritual leadership and things like that. Sure.
Absolutely.
That the Bible calls out, but really the definition between a husband, other than that, wasn't debated until recently. This has been a recent thing when husband was and now you're getting people who don't want to use wife or husband as their title.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what the hell do you call these? So you're just spouse A, spouse B? Is that what you're doing, or what?
What I heard the other day was they're referred to as partners.
Well, yeah, I know that. That's the PC thing to say.
Whatever.
But
I'm sorry, dude. This one gets me riled up because first off, I believe that I'm greatly blessed to be a husband and a father and a man.
Indeed.
I feel like, and when people start to try to take that away from me and want to whitewash it, dude, it crawls up and down me. It does. Even when I was studying this week and I was reading some of these articles, the Aurorand, which is, again, I've mentioned them before, a great website for ridiculous garbage. And they talked about in an article on the Aurorand how a husband and a wife should be indiscernible in their roles in the home. And I'm like, then it's not a husband and a wife. It's a person and a person, right? Again, here we are on this ideology hamster wheel again. You want to call it a husband and a wife, but then you want to tell me that they should be indiscernible and you shouldn't be able to differentiate between the roles of the two. Well, then they're not husbands and wives. They're just people, right? So again, we're on this wild thing where we're going circular. So
the problem I have is that you want this whole inclusive diversity thing between husband and wife, but you don't respect some husbands and some wives.
Absolutely.
So you are exclusive, and you're not allowing certain things because you're saying that, well, even though we're saying everything is cool with all these choices, but those aren't. It's railing against the patriarchy and all this nonsense. One of my least favorite websites of all time is patheos.com. And it both has poor theology and poor opinions about all this stuff. But if you want a place that can go that you can find utter nonsense like that, go there, you'll find it. And I've had lots of conversations with people over the years that refer to this as their, one of their places where they go for, enlightenment. And I just find it, everything Christian oriented, it was just like, it comes from that progressive place where everything's okay. It's like and then, you get, well, I won't go down that, but anyway, the going back to husbands though, it's a man.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So as we already defined a man,
a biological man.
So
Yes.
XY chromosomes, right genitalia,
Mm-hmm.
or at least was supposed to have right genitalia, maybe had an accident, but still, it's supposed to be there. It's a person who's dedicated and committed their life with that woman, and that is now has come into some agreement
Mm-hmm.
with that female about how their roles and stuff are supposed to be.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, this is what I think gets wrong with a lot of husbands. And I'll say this is a good place to probably say this too. A lot of people don't enter a marriage without some discussion on what's my role as a husband? What's your role as a wife? What does that mean to you? What does that not mean to you? What will you compromise on? What will you not compromise on? Those are critical, and people don't get to have those conversations. And had I not, I don't know if I would be married to the right person or not, but I did. Both me and my wife, before we got married, were very defined in how we wanted things to go. And we both agree about, okay, these are non-negotiables. These are the negotiables. This is what we'll work on. This is what we want. But at the end of the day, we're both, the key thing that holds me and my wife together in such a phenomenally glued fashion is our faith, because at the end that's what we look to at the center of everything to go, okay, am I being the biblical identity of a husband? Am I being the biblical identity of a wife? So that leads into your 5 tenets.
Yes.
Of biblical husbandry.
All right. So there are 5 roles of a biblical husband. And this is from hungrygen.com. This is a very solid website when you're looking for principles for Christian men. I've been on their website several times, and just really good biblical doctrine based information. So let's go to tenet number 1. A husband is a leader. 1 Corinthians 11:3. But I want you to know that the head of every man is Christ. The head of every woman is man, and the head of Christ is God. So here are some things, the top 4 things that we pull out of that. Okay, so to be a leader husband in your house, number 1, be proactive, not reactive. Okay?
That's a tough one.
It is a tough one, but what that involves is talking to your wife, conversating with your children. I think a big mistake men make, and my grandfather was a great example of this, and this, I'm not picking on him. He just was he was an old school guy. Everybody went quiet when he got home from work. Don't bother grandpa. He's been a hard day at work. And then, you know, instead of coming home and being like, hey, how was the day? What's going on? Anything big happened today? It doesn't take a lot of energy to ask a few simple questions to stay engaged, right? Number two, as far as I'm concerned, this should be number one, pursue God. Be biblical. Use biblical principles to lead your family. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you, it ain't always the case, right? I'm a human. Sometimes I get upset. Sometimes I get out ahead of myself. Sometimes that ego in me tells me that you can handle this problem, right?
Well, that goes back to our be a man first.
Absolutely.
Right? Be the idea. If you're really seeking to be a biblical idea of a husband or a father or whatever, be a biblical man first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because once you get that figured out, you're almost there. So
absolutely. Now, number three is pastor your home. Right? Now, this ties in being a father and a husband, because if you've got kids, you've got to be willing to have those conversations about faith, God. As I said in the past episode, my oldest son was recently baptized. Proudest moment I've ever had as a dad, because to know that this time you spent with your kids, good or bad, led them to a place where they sought salvation from Christ. Dude, you couldn't ask for more than that for your kids, right?
Agreed.
And that I can go home and tell my wife that I'm struggling this week because I've been praying and I've not been getting any answers. And then I can go home and her and I can talk about our faith openly with no fear. And that I can say to my wife, we're not listening to God. We need to stop and start listening, right? That's just invaluable, right? That to comfort, to letting God and the Holy Spirit move through my house, all of those things, right? And finally, now this one goes back to being a man, be a protector. Okay. Now, Reggie, this is one that I feel you're especially good at. I'm pretty good at it, but I feel like you're especially good at it, right? Protect your family, protect your home, protect their health, protect their minds, protect their hearts. That is our job. And here's something I want to say. Being all of these things is extraordinarily difficult. And that's not to say that being a Christian mother is easy, because it's not. I've seen where my wife has had struggles at times. But I think when people look at us as just Christians in general, I think they feel like we put blinders on and we just, oh, God's got it. And we wander. No, I don't have blinders. I have armor. And I get up every day and I put God's armor on.
Ephesians 6.
That's right. And I literally fight tooth and nail to protect my family.
You know, I do take that protector thing pretty seriously, but it does go beyond just the physical well-being of your wife and of your kids. As the husband, speaking husband specifically, we're talking your wife, protecting your wife.
That's right.
And there's not a lot of stuff. Look, in today's day and age, it's not like we're having to fend off wild animals or hordes of, tribal people that are trying to take you over anymore.
Absolutely.
But man, I would say the most important thing about it is just to make sure that she feels like she's safe. Yeah. And you can't do that unless you are intentional about being that way. And it goes beyond just, like I said, physical. I mean, just financially, it's mentally, online. Are you helping to make sure that she's not being led astray? Are you educating or is she educating you? Cause that could be the case too. But there's a lot to it. I mean, especially things.
Well, the biggest thing for me in that is to be able to protect my family is discernment. Like, as young men, when we didn't have families, discernment wasn't exactly something we used in the strongest way, right? Like we were alone and could defend ourselves. So we walked into some situations we probably shouldn't have walked into. And that's something that I pray for a lot, is discernment. Open my eyes, right? Give me the ability to discern good from bad. And I believe in that. I believe that's kind of the key to being able to protect our kids through whatever it might be, the internet, school bullies, whatever it might be. We have to have discernment, right? We have to know when something's a threat and something is a distraction. So
I think those 5 things are pretty cool, but I would say that the feminist husband ideal would disagree about the leader, and also even protector would also disagree with being a pastor. I mean, all that stuff. Yeah. Those are antithetical to the feminist husband kind of way. They really go out of their way to make sure it's a partnership, and all those things, but again, in trying to demolish gender roles. So I guess I'll say that with it. When you have a disagreement with your wife, Brian, how is that? Are you generally pretty good about containing your anger or temper, or do you struggle with that?
Sometimes I think it depends, right? Like and this is going to sound really strange to say, but I feel like the more weighty the subject matter, the more calm I remain. But I tend to get more aggravated with the kind of day-to-day fluff, right? I know it's not fluff, but that's kind of just a way to describe it. Like if something comes across, it's got some weight. Like we've ran across something today, and I measured my response because it was a pretty big situation, right? Something that could change our future to some degree. So, I stepped back and I told my wife, I said, I hear you. I understand. But I need a day to absorb this information, and so that we can come back to this in a positive way and talk about it. Right. And my wife, knowing the response, was very willing to let me have that time, which I truly appreciate. But for me, it's the day-to-day stuff that gets me aggravated, because I feel like I get out ahead of it, and I feel like it pulls me back a little bit. Does that make sense? And it's nobody's fault, I don't think. It's just my own head and my own willfulness,
But for me, this is bro, I tell you where it is, man. I do not take criticism well from my wife. Dude, I do.
Nor do I.
Dude. And I want, here's the thing though, I want to, because it's important. It's important so that she needs to feel like she can tell me something I might be doing that could, because I want to be better at it.
Yeah.
But dude, when I am horrible, bro, it does matter the circumstances in which she does it, right? Because man, if it's the wrong time, dude, I'm snappy and I'll fly off the end. My temper lights up like no other, man. It's stupid. And it's not, not like we ever get into we don't ever call names or nothing. That's nothing like that. But I don't know, man. It's like me being wrong is I'm just horrible at it anyway. And if I have a difference of opinion with somebody about something I find important, man, I'm passionate and bold, and I'm going to freaking fight for it. And, and I do, I mean, my wife is, it's hard for her to tell me when she thinks I'm doing something wrong or I did something wrong. And I try, man. That's my biggest thing. And I do have a temper. And it's I'm working on it, but yeah, it's a real issue for me. And I think that comes from just, also where we come from. both of us didn't have like weak men anywhere in our lives.
Yeah.
Like mine were veterans who fought and everything else, and who farmers and people that didn't bash an eye about, it's like they would, it's just real old fashioned men from World War II type of thing. Right.
Manly men.
And that's where I'm at. That's why I am. I mean, I am. I'm that kind of guy. So,
for me, I feel like, and it's this weird dichotomy for me of, I will work really hard to do something and be like, yes, I did my job today. I was a good husband. I was a good father. And then when my wife will criticize something, I take it personally, because then it turns that triumph for me into, it tarnishes that triumph.
Yeah, it does.
And then all of a sudden I'm like, well, wait a minute. I just had this conquering day where I went out and I provided, and I brought home, and I interacted, and I did these things and all of these wonderful things. And I think that's where I take it personally, because suddenly I'm like, what did I do wrong? I felt like I did everything right today. So, but I will tell you, this pulls an interesting story. This was 2 days ago. As you know, Reggie, my wife and I work multiple jobs. Well, she has had a break from her second job, just a couple of weeks. And I was sitting on the bed the other night, and she came in the room, and she sat down, and she looks at me, and she goes, I feel useless. She goes, this other job not happening, and me not making that money, and I don't. She says, not even the money. She says, I just kind of feel like I've got all this time and I'm wasting it. And she looked at me and said something with all the compassion that she could say it. She goes, now I understand. She goes, on all those days when you would come home and you feel like you didn't make enough money, she goes, I legitimately now understand why you felt the way you felt. And it was like a massive breakthrough moment between the two of us, because I felt like for once she finally understood what it meant for me to go out and fight all day and not get a whole lot done, and come home and not have provided what I wanted to provide. But again, it's kind of one of those God things where I feel like she had to feel that for him to send that message, right? And I feel like a little bit it's changed our dynamic. Like she's now more understanding when I come home and say, hey, it wasn't a great day. I didn't sign that new client today. I didn't, the training didn't go well, or I lost a client today because of financial reasons or whatever. She's more sympathetic to that part of me now. And I think that comes from the fact that I wouldn't call it a fight. I mean, you know what a fight is between you and your wife. It was a very strong disagreement at times. And I think she kind of came into this moment of, wow, now I realize how he feels. And I think that, but again, emotion.
Part one of the hardest things to do is step into somebody's other perspective.
Yeah.
And with your wife, it's pretty hard to do, because you don't get it. I mean, you don't. And it's hard to like go when she's saying something, or like even when my wife like is venting or something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I have to think, is she wanting me to do something, or
yes,
is she just like saying all this to get it out? Do I give her a hell yeah, sister, or do I like say, give her a hug, or I have to think about all these things, because it's like, I don't. It's hard to tell sometimes, right? But you have to try.
Yeah.
And I think over the years that becomes easier, because you get to, obviously, that's part of growing with your wife, is like learning her.
Yeah.
And she's learning you, and then you meet and you grow that connection over the years, and it's funny how you see some really couples that have been married for 50, 60 years. And it's like, there would be like literally nothing that either of them that could do to like separate at all. Like it wouldn't really matter. Like they're both like, yeah, that's just Billy. That's just, he's just like that, whatever. It's crazy, but I'm just saying there's, as a husband, one of the things I would say, especially for this particular discussion, is like how the husband should always seek to look at the older husbands who probably have a better idea about it than you do. For sure.
Surround yourself with wise counsel.
That's always,
right,
dude. Always.
That's always. Guys, if I could get you to do anything in your life that would make your life better, surround yourself with wise counsel.
But more than, and equal to that too, though, with that wise counsel, don't try to sugarcoat your shit.
Touche, Reggie. Touche.
Don't.
That is very true.
Don't.
But one of the things that is an advantage of that, and I have some very brave, wise, faith-driven men in my life, but they do not pull their punches, right? Like if I'm wrong, they'll tell me I'm wrong, and they will be unapologetic about telling me. They're not mean. They're just like, hey, brother, you're getting this wrong, and here's why. And here's the thing about wise counsel. When you're surrounded with wise counsel, you shut your unwise mouth and you listen, right? You go, I'm not going to talk. I'm going to listen to what he has to say because he's been way further down this road than me. He's a man of faith. He has biblical principles. I'm going to listen to this guy.
Okay, but you just said something that is like penultimate to like freaking life.
Yeah.
Use your brain.
Yeah.
Let your brain lead your emotions and your responses. Yeah. That can be a huge hurdle for people because they're just used to like whatever they feel. Just what? Yeah. Well, no, you do need to have your brain intersect and kind of say, whoa, that this guy has been here and done this. Settle down. He's trying to help you out.
Yeah.
Because you can react really poorly to those things, dude.
A better way to say it is leave your ego at home.
Well, yeah, but you're not going to. That's what I'm saying. You're not going to.
But, and you're going to get your feelings hurt a couple of times.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I've had my feelings hurt a couple of times. But at the end of the day, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with getting my feelings hurt if it comes with wisdom and a better path to doing things.
I've gotten much better at like, I guess, taking that from other dudes.
Yeah.
Because I realized that I'm that guy who's bro, you're screwing this pooch on here.
Yeah.
Because I'll point it out.
So let's talk about another aspect of being a husband.
Let's talk.
A husband is a laborer. Genesis 2:15. Then the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to tend and keep it. From the very first man that was created, one of our responsibilities was to care for and provide.
Work is a subject we will approach in a later episode because I think that there's two avenues of work that we must discuss, and that is like the work for his kingdom and the work we do here on earth. And both of those you could write books about, but I want to approach that. But, being a laborer, when we were in the Garden of Eden, it was paradise.
Yeah.
We didn't work. Adam and Eve didn't work. Now, look, you can debate whether Adam was a tribe and Eve, all this stuff, but for the point, Adam and Eve, okay, they didn't work. They were just, everything was there. They had, it was cool. Now, we don't know how long they were there in the garden. We have no idea.
Yeah.
It could have been like 3 days.
Could have been 3 days. Could have been 30 years.
Yeah.
You don't know.
Here you go. It's been a day and a half. You just shit the bed. Wait, yay. But But yeah, I mean, once that was decided and now we had to start getting our hands dirty, then you could see in the text, especially in the Old Testament, about, working and the work ethic that God instills in man to do things. And I will say that in as civilization has grown and technology's gotten more, the labor part is less than what it ever has been, as far as what because we live in this culture, dude, in westernized culture.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we don't have to go out and hunt for our food. We don't have to go do our crops in order to survive. We don't have to, like, when a storm comes, like, adjust our shelters. And I mean, there's all kinds of things that as a hunter gatherers we had to do. And then now in civilization, we just close the door, watch our TV or, whatever. But I'm not saying there's not labor. I'm just saying it's just a different kind of labor than what people sometimes latch on to. I guess.
I think the problem is the definition of labor, right? We labor at many things. I mean, I labor at being a father. I labor to be a man. I labor at being a husband. And I don't mean, weight on my back, grinding uphill labor. I mean, I work on those things.
Yes.
I put laborious effort into being those things, right?
To it.
So but I'm also in that stage of life where we're building something. So I work a lot. But, I think the thing that we have to do is take the negative connotation out of labor, right? If you look at a lot of our current generation, and look, I'm not picking on Gen X or Gen Z. I'm Gen X. I'm not picking on Gen Z. I'm not picking on. What I'm saying is there are a lot of people that are looking at labor right now as a fail. But I can tell you that labor and being consistently working at something can teach you a lot about being a consistent good person, right? Like about showing up on time, accomplishing the tasks put before you. Maybe do a little bit more to show that you might be worthy of that promotion or whatever's going on. I believe that, like a lot of other things in our current society, labor has been cast as this, this yoke of oppression that, you don't want to work a 40-hour a week job because they're just working you to death for no money. Well, when you look at your labor career-wise if you look at it as a cash value only, then that's how you're going to look at it. But if you look at it as hey, I can be a more consistent person. I can learn to be more task oriented. I can learn a skill and how to accomplish things. There's so much more value in that daily labor. And that carries over into being a good man of faith, about being a good dad, good husband, working hard to create your worldview, right? That's something that you have to labor to do is craft your worldview, right? So it's, yes, if you look at it from a financial situation, that amount of money may not match what you would think. But if you look at all the other internal and personal things that will develop within you that carry forward in life, there's so much more value in being a good hard worker, hard laborer, right?
Here's what I would add to that, Brian, is like labor as a husband entails that you're trying to be the husband that you want to be for your wife. Okay. So if we're talking about husband, that means like you're thinking about, what does she need?
Yeah.
How can I work
absolutely
to do these things?
Absolutely.
Whether that's like making sure there's maybe a date night kind of thing,
yeah.
or whatever. What can I do to help her be better at what she's doing? There's all kinds of things. So I guess that's where I was going with the labor thing, is like, it's not, well, sometimes it is. I'm planning on going hunting this year. So, I guess that's laboring, but it's, but yeah, as a husband, my labor is spent on, I'm vigilant, observant, and very much like trying to be in tune with the needs of my wife.
Absolutely.
So I would say that is a laborious thing. And it does, there is, okay. So before, if you're a single man, and I know this from the difference between, the time I was like between my first marriage and my second one, I had time and I was just me, hanging out. Right. Your stress level is like nothing because you have, it's just you. You don't have to be you're not really attuned to all this. And what I found interesting was that the getting married, now the stress level does incur, but I'm getting more fulfillment out of it. Right. And, once you have kids and it's a little more stress, but it's like, there's more fulfillment. So labor to me is like another way to just help me grow and have a sense of fulfillment throughout the day.
Yeah, I agree.
As a husband, let me ask you this, Brian. How would you, I'm trying to think of a better way to classify that. Is there some things that a husband should not be or do? And I'm not talking about adultery or something. I mean, let's be like, is there some no-nos, right? For a husband?
I mean, I'm a big believer that, as a husband, you should not.
I know this is a different question.
It is, but I believe a lot of it is, and this comes from being around guys as I worked, and I heard this a lot in sales when we would go out and have dinner after a big sales day. I would hear men talking about their wives and being very condescending about their effort, or being very condescending about what they do, or my wife and her little job, or all she had to do was take care of the kids today. Dude, stay home one day with those kids that you don't stay home with every day.
No kidding, man.
Oh, that shirt's clean. Did you wash it, dude? No, your wife did it because you're too lazy to do it, right? Oh, your wife's little job. Well, bro, you're not that good of a salesman. Let's be honest. If your wife's little job didn't exist, you'd be having trouble making ends meet. This frustrates me in the sense that, even if I don't agree with the level of importance that my wife puts into something, you'll never find me belittling the effort. I believe as a husband, it's my job to be a support system for her. Now, if she asks me an honest question, will I give an honest answer? Yes, but I will also realize that I'm speaking to my wife, my other half, my Eve, right? That's who God meant me to be with. And let me be clear, and this is something that I say, and I don't say this because I want applause or kudos. I love my wife, and there is not a human being on the planet that I am more proud of than her, because she bounces so much, and she loves so much, and she gives so much, and she gives it selflessly, and she never thinks about herself. She puts me first. She puts the kids first. Is it always perfect? No. Do I expect it to always be perfect? No. That would be an unfair expectation for me. But one thing I can tell you is men that belittle the efforts that their wife makes, that's the cardinal sin and here's why I say that. Because if you're out there belittling your wife to other men, then you got one or two other problems going on at home. You're saying worse things to your wife, or worse, you're too much of a coward to be man enough to sit down and talk to the things that you disagree about with your wife in a way where you can come to resolution. Either way, that's troubling to me.
Yeah, I would qualify that as they're really insecure about who they are and what they're doing as a husband or whatever. And I would also say this goes to just, how even when you're having issues with your spouse, the way you present them to the public should be shouldn't be crass or whatever.
I do not talk ill of my wife to other people, period.
Okay, look, you should have some confidence though.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say, like, if you're having some issues there, if you don't have real people in your life that you can like go to and like just really say, man, I'm having, that's different. That's your like bros.
Well, but even then
you're not being crass.
You're still going to go to them in earnest, right? You're not going to go to them and be like, dude, what a pain in my butt. She's driving. No.
Well, you might.
I say
you might say that.
I might say something like this. My wife is doing this thing and it is literally driving me nuts and I don't know why or what to do about it and I need help.
Yes. But that's what I mean.
Yeah.
You got to have those guys though, that you're going to probably say some things, but other than those,
yeah,
keep it, don't bring it out in the open,
Yeah.
And I would say also, cause I've never told my first wife's family, and I will never tell them that we got divorced. I will never do that. I won't say it here either, because I don't want anything like that to influence any kind of relationships. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Because at the end of the day, we separated that family. Yeah. It's no longer there. But with my current wife, especially, like, bro, I sometimes don't feel like I'm doing enough for her because of how selfless she is.
Absolutely. I feel that way every day.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I mean. Like, when you make a commitment as a husband, you better start putting that selfless hat on, and that thing better stay on. Don't take it off, with the understanding that you can't obviously be giving so much to where you're negatively impacting.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't run yourself, like, for instance, a provider thing. Like, if you were working so much that your health started to deteriorate, that that you no longer were able to, like, your mood was so impacted that you were having like anger or whatever. Okay,
yeah,
you're doing that's too much, right? And that would be, you got to step that back.
Yeah,
because you're negatively impacted. But in general, yeah, you better be thinking about the selfless thing. Just put that on your hat, because I will never be as selfless as my wife. I don't think I'm capable.
I can't. Honestly,
I've tried.
I've tried at times to live up to the level of what my life is or what my wife is, and dude, that is a inert gift that women have.
Okay, going on, because I don't want to take up like 3 hours of time, but
I got you.
One another thing that I would say is a no is to don't be lazy.
Yeah,
there's a time and place to rest, and there's even some good stuff about taking a minute, especially with your wife and like hanging out with her. You always need to do that, man. I mean,
absolutely.
It for me and my wife, it's not every day, but dude, I make it a point to have that be an often thing where either me and her get to talk, or we'll have an evening where after the kids go to bed, we'll watch something together or whatever it is. But you got to have hangout time with your wife. But don't be that lazy guy who comes home after work and look, I get it. People have really physical jobs and maybe you need some, and that's fine. But hopefully you and your wife understand this and that's understood. But on situations where, like, and I see this especially in 2-income families. I don't have that, so it's a little different for me. But in 2-income families where, one will think they're doing something more than the other, and then you end up with this weird, like, who gets to screw off tonight or who not, or
or you get the opposite, which is, why aren't you putting in as much effort as I'm putting in?
Yeah,
and honestly, I have a 2-income family, and sometimes that's a struggle. Like today, I work in the fitness industry. I was up at 5:30 a.m. I was teaching my first class at 8, my second class at 9. And when I teach, I don't stand back and orchestrate like it's music. I'm doing the workout with them. One was a spin class. That's 45 minutes, probably 25 miles on the bike, right? Then we're jumping off there. I'm going into another room and going through a whole different workout. And then I take a third class on Saturday where I teach, stretch and mobility. And I'm working currently on not allowing the physical part of it to interfere with what I'm supposed to do at home. And I'm as guilty as anybody. There's some nights I come home, I get there at 6 a.m., I get off at 7 p.m. and I'm physically broken. Like I got nothing else left. But I still try to come home and be effectual for the things that need to happen. Right?
Yeah. I mean, like, here's a good, if you've developed your relationship with your wife enough, she'll know when you're done.
Yeah.
And you'll know when she's done too.
Yeah.
But you got to work towards that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but I guess that's what I'm saying. Work at that.
Yeah.
Don't be the guy who just assumes that, you can take that, and go do whatever.
You can take that liberty.
Yeah. Don't assume that. One powerful example I have is like, I have the fortunate opportunity to go out and do some stuff around here that's very physical.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it's tree work. Like if I go down, I'll have to cut down tree, I have to limb it out and do all this, cut it up and all this kind of stuff. We had not last year, a couple of years ago, we had a whole new septic system put in, right? And I had to clear out a ton of.
Dude, I saw that as you were doing it. That was a stunning amount of work.
And I had like 2 days to do it, right? So my wife knew, and I mean, I would, as soon as I got done with my regular job, I got put on my overalls, my boots, and just went at it, right? And I'm picking up logs myself because it was quicker than the use of the tractor. And I busted, I mean, like I was just, I mean, it was done. Like I was so physically just freaking done. And she was like, I'd walk in the door and she'd give me that, oh, honey.
Yeah.
And she go, you just need to, just whatever you need, you please tell me. And I'm like, I can't even talk. Like, it's like, there's no part of me that's not wet from just the sweat. There's no.
With plenty of sawdust stuck to you.
I mean, dirt, sawdust,
it's
mud.
in your ears.
Oh, everywhere, bro. And like, I can't even take a shower because I'm not done sweating yet.
Yeah.
I have to like chill out for a minute. And then I'm like, well, I don't even have a place to sit because I don't want to get anything. It's that kind of way sometimes, right? But my wife is cool enough to go, okay, whoa.
Yeah.
Why did you didn't have to? I'm like, yeah, I did. I have to do. She goes, but anyway, there are certain times though that I have to stop my wife.
Yeah.
Like, okay, whoa, you really, I see it. You need to stop for a minute and calm down and chill out. Cause I said, cause I got this and this that I can't be Mr. Mom for, and I need you to be that way. Yeah. And you have to build that. But so the no is don't be lazy. And
it's easy too, because my wife feels a tremendous amount of guilt. She'll sit down for a little while and then all of a sudden she'll be like, oh, I'm not doing something. And I'm like, babe, it's okay for you not to do something for an hour, right? It's okay for you to take a breath and stop and drink a cup of coffee and kind of prepare yourself mentally for what the day is going to bring. It's okay for that, right?
I have to, man. So right or wrong, my brain moves so fast. And if I don't take time to like freaking sort through the processes that are going on, it just really, I feel weird. And I don't know. Anyway, that's just an idiosyncrasy with me. So husbands, let's put this together a little bit, man. So okay. we have we have some tenets of being a good husband. And I know we've hit these things on a pretty high level.
Yeah.
But they're critical to understand, and even they get a little bit more complicated in today's culture because we got divorce and we got widows or widowers and so all kinds of circumstances and disabilities and whatever can change all that. So I guess what I would say, Brian, what would you say, like, what's one thing that we can use to like glue these together? The man, the husband, and the father. I want a worldly thing, and then I want a biblical thing.
So you want a worldly thing that would tie those all together. That's tough for me because I kind of keep my head out of the world, man. I don't really.
Well, what I mean is, okay, I'll help.
Okay. I can give you the biblical.
A worldly principle would be selflessness.
Yeah. Well, okay. So and that is probably what I would say. Selflessness. Get over your ego and learn to sacrifice yourself for the better of your family. That would be my number one. My biblical principle would be a loyal lover of your wife in every way. And that means love her like Christ loved the church, truly. Sacrifice for her. Minister to her. Be open with her about your beliefs and have common conversations about your faith, because I feel like of all other things, that is the strongest foundation for your marriage, is that you are both open about what you believe, about not only when it's good, because we all know when it's good, right? We all know when you're feeling good and you feel like God's got your back and everything's kind of chugging along and all the wheels are turning and the cogs are linking and everything's happening right. But also be willing to talk to her about when it's not going well and find a biblical principle to stand on to help you fix that crack, that break, right?
Well, and I would say that would definitely tie into all of them. Yeah. Because the stronger your marriage is and the better you're doing as a husband, the better you'll be able to do as a man and a father. Okay. Right. Another kind of secular principle I would probably use here is like, get rid of lust.
Oh, dude, this is something I can go so deep.
I know. And then we need to talk about this later, but in more detail. Cause I mean, and it's even stuff. I mean, look, all men who are attracted to the female body are going to deal with this, man. I mean, yeah, and I'm not saying sure you'll ever get rid of it completely. That's not probably what I'm saying, but you want to diminish that to where it's not impactful to your relationships.
Well, what I would say to what you're saying right there is, look, you can drive down any interstate anywhere and see billboards pasted with sexual images. Yep. My encouragement for men would be, don't add to the temptation.
No.
Right? Like, it's out there. We're not going to escape it. There's Victoria's Secret ads on television, and you can't open Spotify without something popping up with some musician half dressed laying across a tiger's rug it's there, right? Because it's part of the general societal norm. But don't go down the road of, Instagram following models and pornography and those kinds of things, because really they're just distractions to make you want something that you're not going to have. And that's not, all right, I can already hear somebody yelling. It's not saying that your wife isn't beautiful and that you don't have it good.
No, but let's be more, I want to take that one step farther.
Okay.
Okay. Your wife should be beautiful to you no matter her age.
Oh, dude.
Or situation.
My wife is the only woman that stimulates me intellectually, physically, emotionally. I've never met a woman that has been able to fire on all cylinders for me like that.
I just mean that I know certain guys who almost married their wife because of how they look.
No, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then that doesn't last forever.
No.
I mean, there's some, look, I'll be there's some women who hold up and take care of themselves, and they look great at 60 and that's fantastic. But I'm saying no one's going to be a 60-year-old that looks exactly like they did at 20. It's not going to happen, you know, and you have to put aside and look at your wife, not just as the outside. You have to fall in love with the inside.
Yeah.
And you must, honestly, that needs to be the most attractive thing and the thing that you are most attracted to.
Yeah.
Now, you might have to work at that. There ain't no joke. I'm sure that some people right now are in the marriage where they're like, man, my whatever she doesn't do this or whatever. Okay. But I mean, if you're married to her just for her physical appearance, you've done it wrong anyway. And, you know, if you're in that position, then there's a lot of counseling. Yeah. And so there's some things you really need to do to either figure out how you can move forward and like figure that out, you know, or somehow deal with that. Right. So I just want to say that too, because we are men and we are wired to be physical creatures.
Well,
so, you know,
and part of that too, and I would give this kind of goes both ways. Men, remember that your wife is an emotional person and she needs words of affirmation. You know, you need to learn her love language. Wives, if your husband loves you and that physical relationship for him is the most intimate thing that he experiences, right? And it's not because we're shallow, it's because of how we're wired.
Right? Our biology is set up to the fact that we actually need that physical
stimulation.
We have to have it.
And you know, one of the things that a second thing I would say is men can destroy a marriage by what they do. Women can destroy a marriage by what they say. So, you know, men, you know, I know a lot of guys who are divorced now and well, man, all I did was, you know, I watched porn once a week. Dude, that is a nuclear bomb in your marriage. So just don't. Don't.
Okay, but
right?
we got to acknowledge. Here's what I'll say. Porn addiction is completely real.
Yes, it is.
And it's completely something that you likely aren't going to handle on your own.
No.
You know, and it takes some effort. And I mean, look, that's just how it is. It's really dangerous.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It is so hard to deal with, like any other addiction. I'm telling, you know, from my own experience, man, that's a freaking tough thing to get over.
Yeah. It's hard to get past. I mean, I don't think I've ever met a man that at any one point or another has not watched or regularly watched porn. And unfortunately, that's in our current society. I feel like that's some kind of weird
acceptable thing,
rite of passage thing. I don't understand it. And don't get me wrong, I'm not an exception. I wouldn't watch it now.
But I know what you mean.
But it's along with a lot of these other ridiculously bizarre societal norms that have come along. It's like being sexually overstimulated mentally and physically is some kind of weird rite of passage. And I don't get it. Like I can't put the nuts and bolts of that together. Right. So,
you know, so I would say that one of the things that we have to keep in mind with all this stuff is that modern feminism is confusing. And it's so nonsensical. Like some of the tenets, dude, I can get behind until they start throwing some of the other stuff in there. And there's so many different situations that things can apply to. And at the end of the day, what I would just say is that I wouldn't call myself a feminist even if you paid me to do so right now, because it's just such a term that's got so jacked up.
It's just loaded, man.
Yeah.
It's just a loaded term.
And look, it's you have male and female in this world, in this culture, in this society. You got to value both.
Yeah.
And both have roles, and in between all those, the different men can do all kinds of different things. Women can do all kinds of different things. And I mean, look, I don't have any issues with if a woman's doing the same job as a man getting paid the same. And I have yet to see that play out in my own experience. I've worked, even in my own career, I actually fought for a lot of different pay for women in particular to be stuff, and I have, because they were great at their job, and it didn't matter to me what the hell they were, female or male. They were just really great at their job, and they weren't getting paid necessarily less than anybody else or more or whatever. I was just saying, look, you got to reward them because they're doing great at their job.
This person is good at their job.
Don't care.
Right.
And I think, look, we're at the place in our society where that's pretty much a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But I think the only reason why you have attacks on some of these things is because it goes beyond equality. It goes to empowerment.
Yeah.
And it goes to, they want to be in freedom to do whatever they want. But at the end, I'll go back to this and say that the feminist movement does not consider that there's true nature and true biology that does exist and that will dominate society once it breaks down.
Yeah.
So we have to understand that doesn't go away because it's 2023 and we're in the US and, we're pretty wealthy as a country except for our debt. We can talk about that. Yeah. But I guess the point being, but the point being is that, biology exists and it's real, and there's real roles and stuff that are more suited for a male or a female. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with a man who decides to live out what it means to be a traditional man who works, who provides, who leads.
And there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with a woman who considers a traditional role of a woman and to be married to a traditional man. There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
And you and I are two examples of the dynamic, right? You're a single income family, right? I'm a double income family. And let me tell you something. The dynamic of my role with my wife does not change because we both work. It does make things more complicated at times, but it doesn't change the dynamic, right? So, one of the things that I would say about all this is simply this. It's the facts versus feelings thing, right? Like, it's the reality versus fantasy. Look, the fact of the matter is, culture is diverse, and you go back to tribes back in the olden days, you had men that made the weapons, men that used the weapons. You had men that built the huts. But the difference being, they were all still men, and they all knew their roles, and they learned to live and work in harmony and work together. And it was the same with women. They had roles in those tribes. There was nothing wrong with the roles. We understood that all couldn't be the same, and there were intrinsic and built-in differences between men and women even then. The need that exists for us to erase that dichotomy now doesn't hold water, and it doesn't hold standard, and it's a fantasy.
Yeah.
It's a feeling.
I think at the end of the day, man, if you're not discussing your issues or your the needs or what needs to be, all kinds of things with your spouse, you're doing it wrong. And you can solve a lot if you just talk. You just talk it through. I don't think a lot of people who have found to have a lot of troubles, and when I've talked and counseled those people, they have not talked about it.
Yeah.
They haven't talked about it. And it's like, wow,
Well,
what?
And you need to be okay with the fact that it might not be one conversation.
No.
You may need to have several conversations, right?
And look, for a biblical man, you're not going to be okay and align with culture at this day and age.
Not at all.
It's not going to happen. You're going to be counter to that. And there's going to be some pushback if that actually, becomes a thing. Now, I don't experience that really too much here. But I know if there were some people at my work, probably they would have a big issue with how I see the world. But I don't treat anybody any different. So, I don't care. It doesn't really matter because I have principles to live by.
I live by one rule. Be kind. Be understanding of people, and don't immediately jump off the edge to judge someone for who they are, because you don't know someone's road. You don't know what brought them to that point, and you're never going to have a hope of making an impact on that person if you don't get to know them, which I think is, again, I think that's the number one mistake we make in the Western church right now is we want to attack with the message of Jesus, but we don't know that person's story necessarily.
No.
So until we know that story and why they've taken the road they've taken, you may need to take a different tact in how you approach them about faith and changing their spiritual beliefs. And I think it's the same just in everyday life. I think it's the same with your spouse. Don't attack it with, just like you said before, sometimes my wife just wants me to listen to her. She just wants to get it out. And once it's out, we're good.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to do a little, sometimes I'll ask. I'll ask. I've asked this question before. Is this a do something about it, Brian conversation? Or is this a shut up and listen, Brian conversation? And she'll tell me this is a shut up and listen, Brian conversation. Cool. And I just lock it down.
You know where it is. But you ask the question. That's the point.
But the thing about it too, what I warn wives is they're not asking you that question to be stupid. They're asking you that question because men are not built emotionally. So sometimes we just don't know, right? We just don't have any idea exactly how you want us to respond. So we have to ask out loud, hey, is this a I need to go get out my club and start caving people in, or do I need to just chill out and you're going to work this out? Be okay with that communication. And I think you hit it on the head. Communicate with your spouse, man. Talk to her.
That's it.
Talk to him. Make sure that, especially as a husband, just ask questions, man. It's okay to ask questions.
But you're not going to get it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
As a guy,
you're not going to get it.
You're not going to get it. Dude.
I think I can confidently say you might hit 3 out of 10.
Maybe.
More likely 1 out of 10 or none out of 10.
Yeah, man.
But so ask questions before you react. Okay. What is this? What do you want from me in this conversation? Right.
Yeah.
It's a simple question.
And as a biblical person, put God first.
Yeah.
I mean, look, if you have an issue with something, what does he say?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's really, real important. I mean, look, it does you no good to give lip service to something. That's not going to do it. You have to live it out. So in order to live it out, you better open that book. Well,
and also take into consideration, you're going to make a mistake. You're going to misinterpret. You're going to do dumb things. You're going to have to go back and look again. You may have to go through this 2 or 3 times before you get a rhythm, right? Like don't beat yourself up if you don't get it right the first time. Dude, just go back and keep trying. God will have the Bible is it's a living word. You'll get it right eventually.
Well, and look, throughout the whole Old Testament, we never got it right.
Yeah.
I mean,
man, we got it wrong so
over
much.
and over and over and over and over again, right?
Yeah.
One last thing about a husband.
Okay.
Pray with your wife.
For sure. I do not do that enough.
Oh, not me either. It's one thing I've actually talked to my wife about it. I'm like, we really need to pray more together. And it's one of those things, but it's like, I've got to, I'm just saying that out loud. I have got to make that a thing because it's like, I already deal with not I don't have enough prayer time as it is. And I'm not even doing that either. So, I mean, you got to do it. And it's really important for your marriage.
I'll be honest with you, man. I've actually kind of changed my view on that because I felt like that about a year ago. I felt like, dude, I just don't ever have time to pray. And then I read an article. It was actually an interview with Billy Graham. And
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Billy Graham's like, there is no bad time to pray. Like you need to pray all the time.
Yeah, he intentionally started his day off. It was like an hour.
Yeah.
And he was touring. What did it say? He was like 300 days out of the year. He was like traveling around, and it didn't matter. Every day, it didn't matter how busy his day was. He always put that in there because he said it always made the day better.
Well, my wife will say, she'll go, how much do you pray? And I'll be like, I pray all the time. Sometimes I pray one sentence. Sometimes I'll just bow my head and be like, Lord, I'm in the heat of the day. I need to feel you behind me. I need you right now.
Yeah.
And that's it. Right. But a prayer doesn't fall. God's not deaf, and prayers don't fall on deaf ears.
No.
Right. So even if you just stop for just a moment and, sometimes it'll just be a prayer of thanks. Thank you, Lord, for bringing me to this point, right? Thank you for giving me the strength to get through this day. You're the reason I do it, right? Like there's not, and it doesn't have to be, I think a lot of the problem too is people think prayer has to be ceremonial.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, not at all. Prayer needs to be, it just needs to be, it's a direct line to God, right? So just pray, just stop for a minute. You don't even have to close your eyes. Just focus for a second and be like, hey, God, I'm struggling with this right now. I really could use some guidance.
It is different. Like when I've actually like prayed at, like been up on the podium and prayed for the church.
Yeah.
I knew that was going to happen. I would like prepare a little bit.
Yeah.
Just to be like, okay, I don't want to be caught off guard or whatever, but it still goes away. Usually gets ad-libbed a little bit, but I'm just saying it's not like that. I mean, you are definitely, and especially with your spouse, you got to be kind of, I mean, look, you both have to be kind of just free and just pray together, man. And don't even worry about what you're praying about or how you're saying it or whatever. Just do it.
Yeah.
And it'll get better.
Who cares, man?
Yeah.
It's your spouse, man. If you can't pray with your wife.
Yeah, there's a lot of things.
Yeah,
I know.
Right. So,
well, anyway, I think we've touched on everything enough and talked about everything around in a circle. And
guys, thanks for tuning in. We're two guys. We got two mics, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
See you.